Why do some people remain completely silent when they are in the most
Are
pain?
you okay?
There's a hidden truth about the psychology of people who fall silent when they're hurt, and almost all of us misunderstand it. They don't cry, they don't argue, they don't utter a single word. Often, they respond with two simple words, "I'm fine." But in reality, the true meaning is, "Please, leave me alone." We habitually start labeling them. You might think they're running away, sulking, or simply not brave enough to face their feelings. But the truth is that silence is far from empty. A storm may be raging inside them. So many thoughts and feelings may arise simultaneously that their brains freeze, and even if they truly want to speak, they can't. If you're someone who withdraws into yourself when you're hurting, or someone you care about always goes quiet during arguments, and it leaves you feeling helpless, this video is for you. Today, we're going to unpack that quiet exterior through the lens of psychology, and more importantly, talk about how we can reach their inner world without hurting each other all over again. The first requirement for truly understanding someone who goes quiet is letting go of an assumption almost everyone carries, the assumption that speaking or staying silent is a rational choice. In psychology and modern neuroscience, particularly through Dr. Stephen Porges's polyvagal theory, we know that the autonomic nervous system operates independently of our will. When it encounters a threat, and here that threat is emotional pain or intense conflict, the nervous system responds on 3 levels. The first level is the social engagement level. This is the state where we're calm enough and command language well enough to form sentences like, "What you just said hurt me." The second level is fight or flight. As stress rises and the heart starts racing, we argue, raise our voices, or storm off in anger. But when the pain reaches an unbearable level, when the nervous system decides arguing won't help and fleeing isn't a solution either, the most primitive and intense level kicks in. The third one, dorsal vagal shutdown, otherwise known as the freeze state. Picture their body like an electronic device, short-circuiting from too much current. To prevent the system from burning out entirely, the safety mechanism automatically shuts everything down. The silence you're seeing is exactly the moment that switch flips off. Physiologically, their heart rate drops, their muscles tense, and most importantly, the prefrontal cortex, the brain region responsible for logic and language, temporarily disconnects from the emotional centers, from the amygdala. Put simply, language locks up. Even if there are thousands of thoughts inside their head, they can't find the voice or the words to turn those thoughts into speech. So when you stand in front of them and press, why aren't you saying anything? How much longer are you going to stay silent? It's like asking someone with a broken leg to get up and run a marathon. Their silence isn't rejection. It's a protection the body triggers on its own to keep their core self from shattering. In that moment, they're spending every last bit of their energy just to stay standing against the storm inside them. The nervous system doesn't learn to freeze in response to pain overnight. It's a survival mechanism shaped over time. Most people assume this silence is simply about personality. But from a psychological standpoint, it's usually the result of one of 3 underlying causes. The first cause? Childhood wounds. No child comes into the world choosing to hide their pain. They cry when they're hungry, they yell when they're angry, they openly ask for attention when they need it. Expression is instinctive. But John Bowlby, the founder of attachmenttheory, showed that how we handle pain as adults reflects how our early caregivers responded to us as children. If a child grows up in an environment where crying is treated as annoying, anger is punished, or sadness is ignored, their brain builds a harsh equation, showing vulnerability equals losing love equals danger. To survive and avoid the fear of abandonment, that child learns to suppress their tears. They build themselves a quiet refuge and retreat into it. Years later, when conflict arises in a relationship, that same inner child hits the same switch again. To them, disappearing is the only way to avoid getting hurt again. The second cause? The shadow of toxic relationships. Many people learn to freeze after living through a toxic relationship in adulthood. Imagine someone you once loved who gaslit you or constantly twisted your words. Every time you tried to express your feelings, they used your own words against you, flipped the situation around, attacked you, or made it seem like you were the one at fault. You try to clarify something, they tear it apart piece by piece. You cry, and they respond with, "You're playing the victim." After spending enough time in a system where everything you say can one day be turned into a weapon against you, Your nervous system adapts by shutting communication down. This silence doesn't come from having nothing left to say. It comes from a lesson learned the hard way. Speaking only makes things worse, and staying silent is far safer than hoping to be understood. The third cause, how the brain is wired. Finally, there's a cause that has nothing to do with past wounds. Sometimes silence is simply about how someone's brain was built from birth. Communication styles can be split into two groups. The first group needs to talk in order to grasp what they're feeling. During conflict, they think out loud. The more they talk, the clearer things become. The second group, the ones who tend to go quiet, works the opposite way. They need to resolve everything internally before they're able to speak. Psychology calls these people internal processors. For these individuals, especially those with sensitive nervous systems, a loud conflict floods them with far too much information and emotion all at once. Their brain jams instantly, like an old computer forced to open 100 tabs at the same time. Demanding an answer from them right then, expecting them to find the right words immediately, can cause their entire system to crash. The silence you're seeing isn't avoidance or stubbornness. It's simply a loading screen. Their brain needs a brief pause from outside input in order to sort through the chaos and reconnect. Whether it stems from childhood wounds, the aftermath of a toxic relationship, or simply how their brain is wired, one thing always holds true: that silence is never empty. So what's actually happening beneath that quiet surface? Let's look together at 3 psychological truths quietly unfolding inside them. The first truth: their silence is not empty. The outside world may see them as calm, almost cold, like a still lake, but beneath that surface is a never-ending internal conversation. Neuroscientists call this the overactivation of the brain's default mode network, or DMN, the system responsible for self-reflection and predicting the future. When an argument happens, they don't shut down or stop caring the way we often assume. In fact, their mind is working at an intensity most people rarely experience. Inside that deep silence, 1,000 questions are being turned over at once. Was it my fault? What did I say wrong? What did they mean by that word? If I speak now, will it make things worse? They replay the conversation over and over, picking apart every tiny detail. They aren't avoiding the situation. They're stuck in the middle of an analysis maze with no clear way out through words. The second truth: they use silence to protect the relationship. Everyone has a psychological space known as the window of tolerance. This concept, put forward by Dr. Dan Siegel, describes the balanced state in which we can function healthily and communicate. But when they're hurt, their nervous system gets thrown outside that window, dragging them into emotional overload. These individuals are usually acutely aware of their own limits. While the wound is still fresh, they can feel an intense, sharp, dark wave of emotional energy rising inside them. They know that if they speak in that moment, what comes out won't be an honest expression. Their words become bullets. The harshest, most damaging things they know how to say could leave permanent scars on the person across from them. So they choose to stay silent, holding the storm inside so it doesn't spill out and hurt the people they care about. The silence we usually mistake for an attack is, in fact, the strongest shield they have for protecting the relationship. The third truth: the more you push, the more they freeze. And perhaps the most tragic part is what happens when this silence collides with outside pressure. It sets off a kind of psychological chase. You've probably witnessed this before. One person follows the other from room to room, asking over and over, "Why won't you say anything? This is disrespectful." What they don't realize is that for someone who's hurting, every demand feels like trying to force a drowning person to sing. It doesn't help them speak. It pushes their nervous system even deeper into the freeze response. The pressure to talk in that moment ends up confirming the darkest belief they carry from childhood: that their emotions are a burden and they have no right to process pain on their own terms. Eventually, if pushed hard enough, they might say something, but it's usually not the truth. It's just a sentence spoken to escape the pressure, and it shuts down any real connection before it even has a chance to begin. Failing to see these hidden layers quietly builds an invisible wall between people, and even the best attempts to reconnect can hit a dead end because of it. But there's something important to understand. This silence is not permanent, and it is absolutely not a cold, calculated move. Even while they're stuck in that quiet state, a silent evaluation process is still running inside their nervous system. This evaluation doesn't come from conscious reasoning. It's an instinctive survival mechanism. Their nervous system behaves like a radar, scanning for signals of safety. They're not expecting the other person to read their mind or perfectly guess what's going on. What they truly need in that moment is acceptance. The other person allowing them to stay silent while they process the overload without judgment or anger. If the other person can step back and give them space without applying pressure, that act can be more healing than any words. It sends a message straight to their nervous system. You're safe, even when you can't speak. On the other hand, if their silence is ignored or met with frustration, they quietly register that feeling of unsafety. No big fight breaks out. They simply retreat a little deeper into their shell. They adjust how they see the relationship, not to punish you, but because they've just learned something critical. Opening up here isn't safe. And that's the truly heartbreaking part of this pattern. The biggest cracks usually form in complete silence, as trust slowly erodes without a single word being spoken. Even the greatest effort down the line may not be enough to repair it. Because the cost of misunderstanding is so high, finding a way out of this cycle becomes more urgent than ever. So how do we reach a closed-off heart without breaking its fragile hinges? The relief they need doesn't come from complicated communication techniques. It comes from one simple idea: presence without demands. If you love someone who tends to go quiet, the greatest gift you can give them is patience. But not the kind of patience laced with quiet frustration. It has to be patience rooted in understanding. Shift your approach. Instead of following them from room to room, instead of standing outside the bathroom door demanding an explanation, choose to step back. Try a key phrase that can help unlock their nervous system. I can see you're overwhelmed, and I understand you need space. I respect that. I'll be in the living room, or I'll take a short walk. Whenever you're ready, I'm here to listen, without judgment. This step back isn't abandonment. It's you diffusing their freeze response. When they feel the pressure to respond disappear, their guard naturally lowers, and blood flow gradually returns to the language centers of their brain. They'll come back, not because they were forced to, but because they know their silence was finally accepted as part of their process. And if you're the one who goes quiet when you're heard, this part is for you. The way you process emotions isn't a flaw or a mistake. You're not cold, and you're not indifferent. You're simply moving slower than the noisy world around you, because you're busy working through deeper layers beneath the surface. But silence can be a shield, and if it's used for too long, it can turn into a wall that blocks out the love you actually want. The most practical solution for you is to build safe exits. Instead of going completely silent and leaving your partner confused or anxious, try sending a small signal through words or a message. You could say something like, "My mind feels locked up right now, and I can't find the words yet. I need about 30 minutes alone to calm down, but I promise I'll come back and talk to you." A simple sentence like that becomes a powerful bridge. It gives you room to work through your emotions while assuring the other person that you're not leaving them. That's how you start taking control of your defense system instead of letting it control you. Looking at this from another angle, we come across a surprisingly beautiful truth. People who lean towards silence, when they finally choose to speak, their words usually carry an incredible depth and impact. In a world where people react instantly with empty or hurtful words, quiet people are the ones who protect emotional integrity. Their words aren't impulsive reactions. They're conclusions refined through hundreds of filters of honesty and compassion. They don't throw accusations just to win an argument. When they say they're hurt, it means the pain has truly reached somewhere deep. And when they say they value someone, it's a commitment that has already been tested by the storm of silence. These people aren't broken, they're not overly sensitive, and they're not impossible to understand. They simply experience the world at a depth most people don't dare to enter. Their silence in the right moment never creates distance. It's a quiet but entirely real form of presence. And one day, they'll meet people who can sit with them in that silence without fear. People who understand that silence isn't a rejection, but an invitation into a deeper understanding. If you see yourself in this world of silence, or you're walking side by side with someone like this, share your story with us in the comments. Remember that silence isn't a shortcoming. It's proof of a deep soul waiting to be understood with compassion and patience. If this video gave you even a moment of relief, don't forget to like it and share it with someone who might be fighting their own emotional storm without even knowing how to name it. The understanding you've gained today might be exactly the comfort someone needs. Feel seen? You're already one of us. Subscribe? Think too much? You're home.